Credentials Podcast, episode 14. I'm going to be switching roles a little bit. I'm going to be the host for this one. We like to switch things up a little bit. And as you know, I've got my trusty sidekick over there.
What's up, everybody?
Matt. And then we have our guest down that way, Eric.
Hello.
So, Eric, we know you fairly well. It's been a while now that we've all just been hanging out on the group.
Yep.
But to have you on the podcast. So, can you give us a little bit of an introduction as to what you collect, why you collect? Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure thing. And I've loved that ever since you started the podcast, I've wanted to be a part of it. And it's taken a little bit, but we got in there. And I was surprised at first. The community was not very supportive. They were like, "Oh, you're such a loser. Nobody would watch your stream." They would tell jokes like, "Oh, you're so poor that you'd probably bust 95 upper deck and it's probably retail." I'm like, that's not even an insult. Or your collection is so fake. Your Randy Johnson rookie cards are in Expos uniform. And I was like, well, that is his rookie card.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody's like, "Oh, Rusty Greer, I thought he was a bat boy." Like, I haven't heard that a million times.
That's a fair comment.
Thanks, God. But they did have great advice. They said, "Hey, if you want to succeed, you got to join Burroughs Gang, man. Essential credentials."
Burroughs Gang.
But I've jumped through all the hoops. I mean, I got that high interest loan from Greg, lower rate than Alan. What a chump.
Right.
I completed my initiation. You were right, Rodney. That guy, he deserved it. And that thing that Matt made me do. But yeah, I'm super stoked to be here. But my story really starts back in the summer of 1990. If you imagine what the Griffey era is, that was like the exact time I was in Seattle. Summer of 90, I moved to Seattle. December of 99, I moved out of Seattle. And so it was just like this perfect thing. And you'd think, well, why don't you collect Griffey? And I wanted to. He was my favorite player. But if you imagine what it was like, hometown hero, pre-eBay, at shops, at shows, his stuff, high Beckett.
Oh, yeah. Expensive.
High Beckett. So you're talking like a 1 per box insert, $40 for a Griffey. And to me, it was like, well, for that, I could buy a box. I could bust wax, and that's fun and exciting, and you could possibly get something like a 1 per box Griffey. And so I would say up through about 1997, I was really more like a set collector. I'd love busting wax, and I tried to put together, like I put together 1994 score, Gold Rush. I did the 1995 score Platinum Team program. I put together 1993 Select All-Star Rookies set. Nice. And that made it fun for shows because I had all these lists. Right. And I would always be able to find something at shows and come away happy. But I think what maybe some people may not remember is that when 1997 happened, it wasn't like later that we remembered, oh, this was a super sweet time to be collect. We knew it in the moment. We were like, this is getting really awesome.
Right.
And I felt pressure on myself because I thought I lived in like this box of you could be a set collector, a team collector, or a player collector. And with all these cool issues out, I was like, I got to pick a guy. And then like get one issue of everything he's got. And I thought I couldn't afford Griffey. And I think ultimately that was a mistake. And I chose Rusty Greer. He was super popular. Fun fact that I saw on the internet, so it must be true. In 97 and 98, in the Fort Worth Star Telegram or whatever that paper is down there, they do a poll for like the most popular Rangers player. Mm-hmm. And he won both of those years. And during the Super Sweet 90s, when they had like Pudge and Raffy and Juan and Will Clark.
Yeah.
And it was because he was that scrappy blue-collar guy that was an overachiever and that kind of thing. Yep. And then also what I found out, because of that, it wasn't really that much of a discount. at the time to collect Greer as opposed to Griffey, because all it takes in an auction is one person to be against you.
Right.
But by the time I made that connection, it was too late. I mean, I had already invested. I was having a ball, and I just kept going with it, and that's how you end up with a Rusty Greer collection.
Well, I think there's a little more mystique to having a lower value player, because the Griffies come everywhere and you see them all the time. But the Rusty Greer, you get a little more excited if it pops up.
Yeah.
And it becomes like almost an event versus just being bombarded with Griffies. Do I get this Griffey? Do I get this Griffey? I can get this Griffey.
Right.
The Greer card, like, you have to search for it. You have to look around. You have to really hunt. So I think there's more like risk reward for the Griffey or for the Greer, just because you don't see him as often. That's how I feel for Salmon, at least. I don't know.
Yeah, and he was almost a perfect balance with Greer because he wasn't in every insert set. You know how some people, like you guys, have been joking about how I can't believe Bonds is not in this set. Mm-hmm. Well, Greer was in the perfect amount of stuff. So it wasn't a complete avalanche. But again, if something was coming up at a fair price to buy it now or at an auction, it just took that one other guy. And there is one guy who has a Greer collection who dwarfs mine that goes all the way back to 98. And of course, back when he was so popular, there were other people in play, and that really bumped up the prices at the time.
Well, you also said too, he was comparable to Griffey, and it was expensive for you, but I think the best thing is that you were enjoying yourself. So the price really didn't, you can't look back and say, oh man, that sucks. I paid so much for this card. We all could say that. I mean, about a lot of cards in our collections, but it's how much did you enjoy yourself in the process of doing it? And almost it seems like more rewarding for you guys collecting players who don't get a whole lot of love. And so when you do find that card, that needle in a haystack, I feel like that's much, much more of a tough find than it would be to find an A-Rod or a Jeter or Griffey or something, because those will be more prevalent.
Right. And that's why there's so many like Griffey cards out there. You're just bombarded with choices. Which one do I get?
Right.
So when that good Greer, that good Salmon pop up, you're like, that's it. That's the one. Like, I got to get this one, because after that, there's no more. It's just the common cards again.
Well, I think the difference between Greer and Salmon, though, is I swear I see a lot of cool Salmons come onto the market. But I get this weird feeling with Greer that there are these collections that it's been stored away, and they're not hitting the market. There's some cards I haven't seen hit the market since 98. And so that's when you kind of have to move on to other things. But that's when I took a 10-year break starting in 2000 to 2010. And I started getting at other things, and I realized that was more fun to me, is just picking a card based on what I value in a card. The design and the innovation, the photo that was used, and sure, rarity and market value play into that as well. But I think a lot of people also who have left and come back will appreciate kind of how I came back. I was completely out for 10 years. I didn't even look at eBay or was following the market. And it was just one day in 2010. In fact, PWCC, I can pull it up here. It was April of 2010. It's probably about April 9th. And I just, by chance, I pull it up, and there's an auction for 1999 Fleer Tradition starting 9 Rusty Greer. And I'm not excited at all. I'm like, haha, what I would have done back in the day. And so for fun, I throw a $25 bid on. I don't even try to snipe it or wait till the end. I just throw 25 at it. And then, but I notice as it's getting closer, I'm still the high bid. So I do watch as the auction ends, and I get it for $15.
Nice.
Wow, dude.
And in that moment, I'm like, one, I'm back, and two, where's that Red Crusade?
Yeah, the rabbit hole opens up, and you just went straight on in, man. Yep, that's what we all have gone through. I remember 3.5 years ago, I'm sitting in my bed just on my computer. I'm like, what should I do with my summer to do something different? Oh, A-Rod, bought this one. Uh-oh. And then my whole day was completely gone. It was gone for sure.
So then that Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's all it takes is that one little moment where you get an adrenaline rush or something just sparks inside of you, and then you're like, I need to do more of that.
Well, so then that kind of segued me into the collecting community because I really did want to find that Red Crusade. I just did a Google search, and one of the results that pops up is a post on FCB message board, and somebody posted their Red Crusade of their player, and somebody replies jokingly, haha, don't make me bust out my Rusty Greer. And I'm like, well, wait, what? So I go and register on there. That was probably my first experience on there, was registering and messaging this guy. Do you still have it? And he's like, yeah, I'll sell it. Just shoot me an offer. And I said, well, can you do 80? And he said, here's my PayPal. And okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And I just kind of launched.
So you like, I've been talking, me and Matt and everybody, we kind of talk like 2005-ish, 2010. Around that time was when it felt like those 90s cars hit the lull.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't very they were flying under the radar. Like they weren't popular like they were when they first came out, and people were kind of like trying to get the new autographs and the game used. So you really came in near the end portion, I feel like, of when they were at the lull. So you had the opportunities, which there
were pockets.
Sad I missed out on all that.
Yeah, there were pockets where the lull was still in effect, because I can remember as like 98 Tech diffractors. Griffey diffractors would hit the market once every 2 to 3 months, and they would sell anywhere from $30 to $50. And then like from Top Stars, like those luminaries and such, the bronze, silver, and gold, those could hit of Griffey, and again sell from like $30 to $60. And tons of it. There was a Frank Thomas StarQuest home run, numbered out of 100, on Burbank when everybody was complaining about Burbank, for $80. And it sat there for 4 months, and I was like, well, that's a really cool card for $80. So I hit it, and now that's like a joke. How could that card be $80? And it was on Burbank, where at the time, again, everybody was just like, they're so overpriced.
Yeah, they had everything though. I mean, I think that's it.
I know you said you got back around 2017, 2016-ish.
Me?
No. So that was 2010.
Well, no, Matt.
Okay.
Yeah. Summer of 2016. Yep. Yeah, I believe that was back. Yeah, that's what it was. Mm-hmm.
I feel like even for you and me, like we can talk about 2016 prices and 2017. So like every year we move forward. It's like I remember when 2017 when that was $100. So do you even see that as like you're a collector, like the lull, I guess, the quote unquote, from 2016 and 17, and it just keeps going up and up. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you talking to me or him?
Yes, to Matt.
Sorry, Matt.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, I mean, geez, yeah, I could have got an A-Rod PMG for $150 when I first got back, and I had this rule in my head. I said, okay, they set a goal for your highest ceiling for you're going to pay for cards, and obviously my goals have changed for my collection. As back then it was just about getting some cool cards. Had I known what the market was going to do, I mean, I passed up several cards that I have had to pay a lot more for, and the PMG, which I still don't have. So I think, Eric, you came back in the perfect time, man. Like, we all go and look at PWCC and their completed auctions, and the amount of cards that we are looking for that have sold for cheap, it just baffles my mind. It almost makes me angry to look at it. So sometimes it's fun to look at it, and sometimes you're like, gosh, man, what was I doing back then? Like, because me and Greg both busted new products. I remember buying a case of basketball stuff, and it was just like, man, I was not thinking clearly.
Right.
Well, and that's, Eric, you really got in on the lull, but me and Matt are seeing like just an every year increase, where the things that I missed out on 2017 are now, 1.5 times the price. So it just seems like there isn't really been a lull for us. It's just been like you either get it now or you pay more tomorrow.
I really think some of it just has to do with the distance in years from when people had that nostalgia of when they collected, to then when they have the financial freedom to do this. And I think we're just like if you think back to when the original boom happened for baseball cards, it was in the 70s of cards from like the 50s and 60s. And so that's kind of like how we are now.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense because when, at that time, 2005, 2010, I'm in college with no money.
Yep.
So Frank Thomas is an afterthought because I'm trying to just like buy a Subway sandwich. So, I think you're right. Where nowadays we have, we all have jobs and we have like time for a hobby. So that Frank Thomas refractor looks pretty tempting on eBay, and I got the cash for it now. So why not?
Yep.
Anyways, we're gonna move on to the next segment because I want to get into it about the Crusade. That's what the meat and potatoes of this. So. We're going to talk a little bit more about the Crusades. We kind of left it open for the last Crusade episode because we wanted to add some things, and there's a lot more to talk about. Really, the Crusade never ends. You're always on an adventure. So,
nice one.
Eric, you personally got to witness the executive proof bankruptcy backdoor situation. With the Crusade. Can you explain a little bit about what that means, what happened?
Sure, and let's kind of pick up from where in that last episode you left off, where Rodney left off. If you picture the checklist, or you can see the checklist at any time on Baseball Cardpedia, Rodney's done a fantastic job with that.
Yes,
the first 130 cards of the Crusades, of course, were pack inserted, and then the executive proofs were of those 130 cards in all three colors. And then Rodney also showed evidence of non-serial numbered of those first 130 cards. So if you think about it, if you want to get everything, that's like 9 cards for your player just from the first 130. And then there's the unreleased, which there's only really one version of, the non-serial numbered version, all three colors. So a total of like 12 of your player. So I kind of wanted to start off from there. The most recent kind of release into the market, I think, was in 2015 when a seller on eBay, Samho, had this big collection of the unreleased Crusades, and he put them all out for auction. And as I recall, he was doing it as player lots. So if he had all three colors were in that one auction, and you would win all three colors once. If he only had 2 colors, like he did for Rusty, there's Rusty's Call to Arms, then you could get whatever he had. I swear I also remember some kind of like mixed lots, maybe of the lesser players, but I can't say for sure off the top of my head. But even as kind of mind-blowing as this revelation was and the interest that people had, I think there's still some people that were kind of hesitant because there wasn't really an established market. And because it was an auction, I still think stuff was underpriced. And fortunately, I was happy with the price I got on the Greers. And I think a lot of player collectors came out of that with cool cards to add to their collection for a really fair price. So I thought that was a big deal to the community. That same seller had actually contacted me a couple years before by email. He had met me in Freedom Cardboard, and he said he was putting together like the master set of the unreleased Crusades. I hadn't even heard of them at that point. And he was asking me if I had the green Rusty. I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So he sent me a picture, and I was like, whoa, there's something I'll never have, except for a couple years later, he decides to just blow them out.
Well, real quick, did he ever mention to you like how he came across these, or did you ever any backstory on like the information on why he has them?
Yeah, good question.
That's a huge part of the equation. It's something I failed to ask, but I did talk to Rodney about it just like yesterday or day before yesterday. He got the feeling that somehow this one guy got it from multiple people, and I'm trying to think. He must have had some like inroads to them because I don't think they were on the open market.
Yeah.
And somewhere along the line, those would have probably had to have come directly from Pinnacle employees.
Right.
So it's kind of amazing how he put them together. If it was multiple people, I always had this envision where they were doing like chunks to either as compensation or as corporate gifts or just they kept them for themselves, however they did that. And that kind of moves into what I experienced back in 2011. It was the evening, I can tell you the exact time. It was the evening of April 22nd, 2011, and it looks like 4:39 Pacific Standard Time. And I do just this real general search that I always do for 90s cards. What's new? What do they call it? Recently added on COMC. The page is just filled with Crusades. And I'm like, whoa. And you know that if for those of you who have done COMC, you know that panic of when you don't have money loaded and you see something you want. So you scramble, you're doing your mouse, you're messing around with trying to get the funds loaded.
Yeah.
Then I came to the next critical point, which is it was fair priced. Do I just hit it? So what I always do, I put in a 1 cent offer because then it says what the minimum offer you can make, and it was
you taught me that one. You and actually Greg taught me that after, and then you guys have all taught me how to do those things. Yep.
So I took the risk, and I said I'll give it like 5 minutes because this stuff just loaded. If this person is still on pricing their stuff and they see my offer, maybe they'll accept it or counter.
Logical.
So I put in my offers, and I go to my dashboard, and it's like I don't see my offers. What just happened? Well, then I scroll down a little bit. It said you just bought them, and I said they've got auto accept 50% on, and it was like whoa. So you could see throughout the night, and my mind was so blown, and I got what I wanted. I wasn't even thinking about the other cards, and slowly they would come off the board. Go ahead.
Was the minimum offer the half price offer?
Yes.
Okay, so as soon as you put the minimum price, you bought it.
Wow.
Yeah, instantly.
Crazy.
And 3 days later, it finally hits me. What am I doing? There's still some of these up. So I load some more, and so I get like a Sandy Alomar Jr. purple for $15, a Sandy red for $30, a John Smoltz Call to Arms purple for $30, and then I just flip them on eBay.
Yeah.
And again, I think this was really important for the same reason the eBay one was important. It got a lot of players into player collections. Right. And then even some of those who were profiteering, like I did, we got them out into the marketplace, and they got into player collections. Mm-hmm. One thing that was a little bit unusual, though, about it is I noticed there was none of the super premium stars. You can actually go into COMC, look for 98 Crusade sample, sold out, and you can essentially see all the cards that were posted that day.
Yeah.
And you'll notice there's like no Griffey, no Jeter, I don't think Ripken, Frank, no. Now there's some superstars, like I think Ricky Henderson, maybe Jose Canseco, Chipper Jones. So it made me wonder exactly, again, back to your question about Samho, how did he acquire those, and how did those move from corporate out into the collections or marketplace? Because it made me wonder, did those get cherry picked out, or the collection that he bought, is that just how it came to him? And the mind-blowing thing about this now, if you think about dealing with them now, is that this was Dallas Card Boys. So they obviously had a different business plan back then. Mm-hmm. If they had turned on their 50% auto accept, then they didn't even change what they were doing, and 3 days later you could do the same thing. So it just made me wonder if that experience, because I have a feeling they left more on the table than they actually took in from their sales.
Yeah, naturally.
I just think it's because people didn't know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the thing with the amount, how easy it is to find out about these cards now. And of course, we're still kind of uncovering the mystery behind them. There's so much more about them out there now than there was when those were listed. So I think that's just adding to why, Rusty Greer, Tim Salmon, for crying out loud, will sell for a really high amount, because it's like, now that we know about how rare these cards are, it's completely changed the game. Really.
Also, like an event like that, which you could consider an event,
right?
Creates the hype for Crusades, and it has other like unintentional side effects. So maybe suddenly you've created an additional Ricky Henderson collector. Maybe you've
Mhm.
created a new John Smoltz collector because they have the Red Crusade, and they're like, well, I like John Smoltz, so why don't I start collecting John Smoltz? So like there's so, like the butterfly effect. There's
Yeah.
with
And
that.
you can imagine the social impact. It was popping on FCB that night. You can probably go back and find the few pages that night
Yeah.
from the Super Sweet 90s thread of how people were just going nuts
Right.
and figuring out, what does this all mean and how do we value and kind of going now back to what Matt was just saying. People didn't know the value. And when you're dealing with sellers that have huge inventory, if you look at COMC and who has the most cards, or even some eBay sellers, they don't know the market necessarily, especially if they have that many cards. They're not going to like go research every card before they put a price.
Right.
Sometimes they're just going to throw a price.
Mhm.
And if you're hitting that with offers like in the first 5 minutes after they've listed it, or even just a couple in the first hour, you're letting them on to something. They didn't necessarily, and they're going, there's a market for this.
Right.
And I might have it priced too low. And especially if you're a seller that got burned in the past by having on their auto accept 50%, then I think it's an okay thing to do to then bump your price up.
Mm-hmm.
As a buyer, you had the offer to hit it.
Right.
And so it's a really tough decision. I still fall into the trap of, well, maybe I can get a deal.
Right. Yeah, we all do, man. I mean, Greg knows better than anybody.
Well, there are certain when you get burned, you learn from your mistakes. So there's always going to be certain sellers in certain places where their routine now, or at least what their practice is. So you're always going to come across those certain sellers where like I either need to buy this or I risk like blowing it up, and the price is going to go up even more. So you really have to balance, because sometimes I've been in the instance where I've made an offer and the offer got accepted or the offer got rejected, and it went up like it was a counter offer for $2, and then I've had instances where the offer was rejected and the actual price of the card doubled.
Yep.
Now my offer is invalid, and the card is close to the price that it was. So you really got
to too, Greg. I mean, think about how many times we've made an offer, and if we'd have gone like $10 more, the card is ours, but we're like waiting, and then you kick yourself in the butt,
right,
for not just ponying up the extra $15. And I've definitely lost out on a couple of my bigger ones because I was like, oh, I could get a good deal on this, and that's changed my mindset really. So honestly, I can almost sympathize with some of those sellers, like you're saying, Eric, for them bringing that price up higher than it should probably be, because there's going to be people that are going to want it for that price because they've been burned so many times they haven't got the card. They're probably going to just pony up eventually.
Right. And if the seller's been burned in the past, maybe they're gun shy and they're afraid of making a mistake again. Right. And I just think that, especially if you've been waiting for a card and it comes up at a fair price, I know that in my mind, I'm always thinking, well, what if somebody has a better offer than me, or what if somebody swoops in and just hits the buy it now? I also have to be thinking, I'm also sharing information with the seller. It's not just between you and other people; it's between you and the seller. And at that point, it's still the seller's card. They can do what they want with it.
Yeah. Right. Well, Greg, that happened with you with the now that you own it, we can talk about it, the Red Crusade, right? I think Greg talked about that. You tell it. I mean, you had the experience of it.
Yeah. So it was you could either make an offer or put a bid for the Salmon Red Crusade. So I made an offer and he didn't accept it in the first 20 seconds. So I was like, well, what do I do? So so I just put it. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to play the auction game. I don't want to lose. I don't want my offer to not get accepted and somebody makes a better offer. I'd rather play the auction game, and then at the end of 7 days, I'll just be the winner. Because at least you have time to formulate a plan. You have time to acquire your assets and money and put your finances in a place to where you can win, versus playing the best offer game, and who knows how that's going to end up. So for me, that's hard to do. When I make an offer on a card that I really like, if every second feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
Because you're wondering who else is making a better offer than you.
Yeah, well, it goes out with the auction too. You know what I mean? Like when those things are running down to the last minute, and you're trying to bid it up, and you think you're going to win. You think you're going to win. I mean, I lost what was it, a 2000 Showcase Legacy out of 20. Thing was like $30 with like 13, 15 seconds to go. I'm like, this is going to be the greatest deal of my life, and I didn't bid it up high enough, and I lost it. You know what I mean? Because, so it goes both ways, man. I mean, nowadays, I think, especially after going to the National, it's like I go way higher than I used to for stuff that just to make sure that you don't lose out. And so, again, to come back to your point, I see why they list things so high when they're not up for auction. I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah.
And another thing to consider is, like in that A-Rod you're just talking about, number 20, you think you know the market for a guy, but once you get into a certain level of rarities, that's bringing in different kind of buyers.
Right.
Either set collectors or just people with a lot of money who specialize in the super rarities. There was a time where I collect a semi-star in football, and it was buy it now for 170. It was a Gem Masters 1/1 from 99 metal.
Oh, wow.
Buy it now for 175 or start the bidding at like $1. And I was like, I know the market for this guy. I'm going to start at $1, take the risk, and then I'll set a snipe that's actually higher than the original. Buy it now as a safety thing. It sells for like over $300. And it blows, and I'm like, what did I just do?
Right.
Of course there's going to be people out there that don't collect this guy that want this super, almost mythic card. And I learned a lot.
You're right. Once you cross that certain level of card rarity, then you get all these other guys who view investments. They see, the gears are in motion for them, or they're thinking, okay, if I sit on this card for 2 years, I'm going to double my money. So once you cross that threshold of rarity, you go from like set collectors, player collectors down here to like investors. Or
people that are trying to create like their own personal museums.
Right. Yeah. There's so many different aspects to pass that threshold, like what kind of collectors you're dealing with. So that's one thing I've had to think about for that Red Crusade. I was like, maybe I'm looking at set collectors now. Maybe it's not just the salmon guy. Maybe it's something way different. Who's willing to sit on the card and make an additional 200 off of it in 2 years. You never know.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I just love that you said too, Craig, that you set your bid so high, and I definitely learned your final bid. I'm like, I am learning from that. That if some of those mythical cards to me show up and they go up for auction, I'm gonna go a little bit crazy just to make sure. Like, you don't want to see it go and not come back again for another 5 years, So.
But on the opposite end, if that card would have went for what I bid for, I would have a stomach ache.
Yeah, let's not talk about that, right?
Yeah. But I've not seen the other. What I learned recently is the Crusades have the regular and the call to arms. And I did not know that a salmon call to arms existed. So I don't know what that looks like. So that has been recent information for me that I've learned. I would love to have the call to arms salmon, any color, because I didn't even know it existed until a few weeks ago. Which is an unreleased card.
But you've seen a picture of it?
No, I've not. I've not seen a picture of it called arms. I don't even know what it looks like.
But we know it exists, right? Because the information we learned from Rodney last time we talked about these. So, but again, that makes me ask. Like with all those auctions that got listed, he wasn't in there, right? Or not the auctions, but the COMC listings. Eric, like he wasn't in there. So where are some of those players that have never popped up? Do they exist for real? Like somebody's holding on to them? It's fun to think about.
Right.
Or hiding.
Right.
Yeah, I've seen the salmon call to arms on PWCC. It looks like CTA, so it looks like it's sold at some point, but I don't know what it looks like. I don't know what the picture looks like. It could be sitting in somebody's collection, but. Looking back, I wish I would have been around for that COMC Crusades event, because that would have been
cool.
Some kind of spectacle. I probably would have bought some guys just like you did, Eric.
Well, yeah, but I'm wondering if the two that are on there now, I'm assuming that person got them from that seller.
Yeah. And it stands to wonder. Like, we don't know the backstory. You weren't able to get that from them. So
Right.
was it somebody who ended up with them, and once the company stopped making cars, they figured they were safe to just sell them? And
Yeah, that's what I think. I mean, for one, that kind of goes back to what Rodney talked about in the first episode. Is because of the bankruptcy thing, they were told you can't sell the property of Pinnacle Brands or whatever the wording was. And now it's been such a long. It's kind of funny if you think about it. More new 1998 cards
yeah,
have come out in the past 5 years than in the 15 years prior to that,
Right.
because of this new influx of stuff from the bankruptcy. And
yeah, you get people who think, who cares anymore? It's been so long. Like, what are you gonna do? Sue me? So
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think. Oh, sorry, Eric. I think that people, again, with the amount of knowledge that we're finding out about these cards, I think they are seeing that we are ready to pony up for these cards. Yeah. You know what I mean? The market has grown and is there for these cards. Like 15 years ago, yeah, sure, somebody could have gotten in trouble for maybe listing them, but they're not going to sell for very much. So they must know. It must be holding them, waiting for the market to hit this peak that it's at right now to throw them out there.
I don't know. The feeling I get from sales I've heard of other, not Crusades, but other similar like backdoored or executive type proofs, is that these Pinnacle employees have just held on to them. They don't even bother looking at the market. They take them to like a card shop and sell it as a lot, and they kind of have a number in mind, but they've not done their market research.
Interesting. That's what I think. A lot of these people probably have them in their shed or in their closet, and maybe they have recently looked at the prices just to, they were bored trying to create some space in their closet, and they're like, wow, I could get $200 per card for this.
You might remember there was that funny post in the group from a couple of months ago from a kid saying he's trying to raise money for college or something, that his dad knew an employee, and he was selling stand and deliver Reds.
Right. I almost got the idea of that because I saw that specific post. My dad has it. I don't know if I believe it.
And so there's got to be other similar stories like that out there of somebody who has the stuff and they have and they're just say, here's this neighbor kid. Sure, you can sell these to make college money or whatever. It's just mind blowing.
Yeah. Matt, you have the purple and the green call to arms, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen any regular?
I know that Brant owns a green one. It is one of the unreleased. I think it's either an unreleased or an exec proof. He's got the green of that. That's the only card. I think he actually sent me a picture of what the purple looks like, but he doesn't own it. So I've seen them. In my mind, I've already kind of put it out of the fact that those cards will never show up again. I don't think
it is a completely different picture than the call to arms.
It is, yeah. He's fielding, I believe. Yeah. So I mean, it's one of those things. I didn't even know it existed. There was a Freedom Cardboard discussion or something going on, and he jumped in there. And then once I transitioned to the Facebook group, I again asked him, like, hey, can I see what this looks like? And he showed me. That was great. I'm like, but still, it didn't mean anything to me. You know what I mean? Because I put a premium on cards that come out of packs.
Right.
Because they were at some point the card was held in somebody's hand, like that. Oh my gosh, look what I pulled.
Right.
So I kind of didn't really care about it as much, to be honest. And now that we've done these episodes, man, I'm just like, I've gained more respect for these executive proof cards for sure, because the stories behind them are just wild. You know what I mean? It's really cool.
I was totally where you were, Matt. I was totally where you were until the Crusade Red. and it was like the Mike Tyson quote, allegedly, everybody has a plan till you get punched in the mouth. Well, Crusades punched me in the mouth.
Nice quote.
And it changed my perspective on it. Go ahead.
I think cards like those, because I'm in the same boat as you guys, where I'm like, if it's not pulled out of a pack, I don't really care about it. Mm-hmm. And then you get something that's special, like the Crusade. When you talk about an unreleased executive proof of a base card, how excited can you really be?
Right.
When you look at like you already know what the Crusade is, because you're like, these are so beautiful and they're hard to get and they're just a well-known insert, and then you add something to it, like a new picture a subset that was never released, and suddenly your interest starts to peak because you think, well,
Right.
man, I don't really like executive proofs, but man, if I could get my hands on that, and so it kind of opens the door. Like, I'm still not a huge fan of the executive proofs and the backdoor stuff, but things of that nature, like the Crusade, is something. How can you not be interested in a different picture of a Crusade? How can you not be interested in that?
Right.
It's hard not to.
And just a reminder for the viewers that with the unreleased and with the executive proofs, we think there's almost zero difference in population between the greens, the purples, and the reds. So of course we're totally brainwashed and trained to say the reds are worth the most.
Yeah, exactly.
But in reality, with those two kinds, it might be the exact same print run.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I kind of respect about, maybe respect's not the right word, but about the Crusade proofs is that I feel like there was an intention there, that they had a plan. It was distributed the way that they wanted, even though it was executive proofs and it was like not backdoor stuff, but behind the scenes stuff where I'm an executive, this is for my personal collection, or I'm going to give this as a corporate gift to one of my corporate partners, or I'm going to give it to my employees as a bonus, or we're going out of business. I need to compensate my folks for doing a great job. You can take this with you. But I felt like there was an intention there. Whereas with the backdoor stuff that's coming like out of people who are third-party printers and kept these sheets, and then they're getting cut up in a chop shop, I was really disillusioned by the 1998 Bowman Chrome Golden Anniversary refractors that had the counterfeit stamps.
Yeah.
That kind of had me looking at everything differently, and it was a good reminder to stay really within your budget on the rare stuff, because you never know when the game's going to change.
Yeah.
You never know if there are sheets out there of uncut 1997 Pinnacle certified mirror blacks. It's possible.
Right.
You don't know if somebody out there could counterfeit a Pacific Online winner stamp and just go to town. It's possible, and keep it fun. Keep it fun.
Yeah, I agree, because that's where you get into that realm of like, you want the Crusade that's been unreleased, and you built it up in your head. That's something that you'll pay a pretty penny for, but then suddenly somebody pops up and there's 40 or 50, and you're like,
yep, I've
paid $300 for this card and now there's 40 of them that have just been released or cut. Matt, do you remember that A-Rod that you were wanting to get? I think it was one of the big consignment guys on eBay
Right.
selling it, and it was like a cut one.
Yeah, it was a sheet cut version of the card, and I definitely did not care once I saw that. At least he said that it was sheet cut. I mean, shoot, if it wasn't, I would have been really disappointed to find out it was. But yeah, I mean, I think for the Crusades, the thing that's in my mind that Eric said that is a great point is we know for sure that there's no counterfeit, at least yet. There's no counterfeit Crusades. You know what I mean? So it's a safe buy. We know that there's 2 of each of the executive proofs and 2 of each of the unreleased, so we know what we're getting is rare. Whereas, like, those select cards that have been thrown up on eBay, they're great, but there could be 50 of them out there, even though there's only 1 listed. We don't know for sure. So that's why I've been hesitating, especially for the price that they're at, to go for something like that. Whereas if a Crusade executive proof A-Rod come out, I'm like, all right, this is something that is worth the investment for sure. So,
well, Eric brought up a good point where he said they're all like equal in population, where the unreleased, because I saw on COMC the salmon, the green was like $96, the purple was $96, and the red was $96. So whoever had them, I don't know who it was, but they viewed it as the same that you do, which is these are all equal in populations,
And again, we got to be super careful in saying what we know, that we know how many executive proofs or we know how many unreleased, because for over 15 years we knew that there was only like 2 sets of stand and deliver reds that had hit the market, and everybody wondered, well, what happened to I don't think the program ended up being popular, and I don't think all the prizes were awarded to consumers. And so we thought, oh, did they just not make them, or did they get destroyed? No, they're actually out there, and we've seen, I think, at least 3, because they came in a framed set, in a big picture frame. We've seen at least like 3 of those emerge since then. And so if you bought way back when you thought there was like 1 or 2 sets, and then 3 more hit, I mean, that's big money when you're talking about like Jeter or Nomo or something like that.
Right. Absolutely. And if I'm correct, for anybody that's watching that doesn't quite know about those, they're from 96, correct? Or 97?
97.
97. Any of the individual cards that you buy on eBay have been cut, right? They've been pulled from the frame and cut, or were they pre-cut and framed for you?
They were like, it was a type of an adhesive,
right,
that placed them into the frame as a presentation piece.
But they were individually placed in there, one card at a time?
Right. And sometimes you can remove the cards with no harm done, but sometimes there's some adhesive issues.
On the back, obviously, right? There's no issue with the front because it was just touching the frame. Okay, because I haven't seen any. I mean, I've seen a couple red A-Rods go, but I haven't really paid attention to the back. So now I know to pay attention to that if I ever decide to go for that card again. So
they can get some chipping on the back, some little pieces could be removed.
And it's a real dark border, and it's just the type of material that's prone to chipping.
Yeah, it's that gold foil, right? That's on there. Well, and I wonder too. It's no wonder the graded versions go so much higher now, because to get a PSA 8, 9, or obviously 10 of that card, the gold with the red foil, I mean, that's got to be near impossible unless you peel that thing or pull that thing off the adhesive. So,
well, I think it did help that they went directly into the frame, and as long as they stayed in that thing without somebody messing with it, until somebody who knew what they were worth was almost professionally removing them.
Right.
There's definitely cards that came out of there that PSA'd at 10, and I've not ever looked at the pop report, but some of the people who invested in buying the whole set out of the frame from somebody who, one of them might have even been Craigslist, PSA'd them and then just made a ton of money on it. Just another footnote that we've not really covered yet with the Crusades, I just want to throw in real quick. Even if a Crusade is graded high, or if it's a great buy it now, just take an extra second and look at the scan, because they're prone to print lines. I think there is a Canerco green on auction right now that I had to look at, take a triple take to see the print line. It was towards the bottom of the card, and it kind of coincided with the shadow of the player, so it was a little harder to pick up. So yeah, it's something to keep in mind. The only one that I pulled back in the day, I pulled a green Maddox, but it had a print line, and I was disappointed. And
you actually pull one out of a box for real?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, what box was it?
I can't remember if it was 98 Donruss or 98 Leaf, because I did a significant amount of both.
Wow. So I mean, when you open the pack, I've always wanted to talk to somebody who's pulled one of them.
Yep.
Was it clear, when you even grabbed the pack, that it was heavier? Because I feel like those would stand out like crazy.
It wasn't heavier, and like Rodney said, it was what do you call it? A stealth release.
Yeah.
So I was a little surprised, and I knew, of course, you have something cool,
right?
But you're also a little bit confused, because you look at the odds and you go, well, what is this exactly?
Nice, that's cool, man.
And again, I should look that up to see. I did actually a lot more Leaf than I did a Donruss, but for some reason I get the feeling it was out of Donruss.
But man, what a card to pull, Maddox. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Was it a green, purple, red? What was it?
It was a green.
Oh, nice. Cool.
And again, kind of going back, and this is where I kind of get stuck. Ever since I've come back to the hobby, people want to know if they want to do me a solid, like I've done a favor for them, or if they see a card that I've got that they really want and they want to trade, they say, well, what do you collect besides Rusty Greer? And it's so hard to trade with me, because the answer is cards I like. So, and unless you want to list all your cards, I'm impossible to trade with sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think back, I had to have a mindset change when eBay came along, and I did the math. I'm busting wax. I'm getting cool cards, but not necessarily of the guys I want.
Yeah.
Why am I not just buying singles on eBay? And it happened in an instant. I bought a box of something at a card shop, and I didn't get the hit I was expecting, and I was like, oh, I'm done busting wax.
Yeah.
And I didn't bust anymore, and I just did it for fun, in the 2010s with some Topps crap. But I hadn't really busted wax since then.
Yeah, it's a gambler's game. You know, it's the adrenaline rush, hitting the big card. But if you're a player collector, I feel like you're working against yourself by doing wax because you're not.
Yeah.
Odds are you're not going to get your person, so you might as well just buy what you want. If you're just a baseball collector, then wax is okay because what you get, you're going to be happy with, and maybe you'll trade it, maybe you'll sell it. But if you're specifically looking for A-Rod, then the odds of getting A-Rod from that wax are not in your favor.
And I didn't have my mind right because I had some good pulls. Like I also pulled a 63 Classic Jim Thome. And I love that card. And it's like, why did I sell it? I sold it. And then with the money, I like bought more packs or more singles. And it's like, that doesn't even make sense.
We've all done it though, man. We've all done it.
But I'm in a right place now, I think. Because again, I go through my little checklist of what I like. And if I see something, I don't player collect that guy, but that's a card for my collection. Like when I posted that Mike Piazza grand finale from a couple months ago.
Yeah,
Right.
Like, no, I don't player collect them, but that's part of my personal collection. I love the card.
Yeah, and I think we all have little cards like that where it's just, it's not your guy, but it's a cool card that you just want to hang on to. So,
and I love how you do it, Greg. You have your guy, but then you also have like your secondary guys. And when you see like a deal or a really cool something, okay, yeah,
7, 8, yeah,
bling bling.
But Eric, once you have a lot of good rusties, it kind of dries up.
Yeah.
So it's like,
There's not much to do.
Yeah, you can sit here and be like, well, that was cool, So
I could play a fun game in the group and say, name your player, and I'll show you a card that you may not have.
Yeah.
Alex Rodriguez.
What's that?
I said Alex Rodriguez. Let me see it.
Go ahead.
I'll go get it. I'll go get it.
I'll
get a card that you don't have.
Man.
You don't want to stop collecting. You just don't have any of your guy to get besides the common cards, which really don't do much. So it's like, what else do I still want to collect, but I can't. I'm kind of at the crossroads of what else to do because the Salmons aren't coming up, the Greers aren't coming up. So that's where the side collections come into play.
Greg, you actually said something a week ago that kind of sparked in my mind exactly what's going on with what I'm doing. You talked about your saved searches by player, and I'm like, wait a second. I don't have saved searches by player. I have like one, and that's Rusty. I have saved searches by set because I'm just looking for the sets that I like of like a star player that I like with a cool photo.
Right.
And then that's what captures my interest.
Yeah.
Well, my searches are Frank Thomas, Ken Caminiti, Nomar Garcia-Parra, Paul O'Neill, Tim Salmon. So I sit there and I will look through like 100 Frank Thomas cards almost every day, at least 100 every day. And sometimes I'm like, I'm not in the mood. Screw it. Whatever just came up, I hope I don't want it. Because it gets overwhelming. You got to draw a line at some point because, especially with Frank and Nomar, I can handle King Caminiti, Tim Salmon, and Paul O'Neill. But when you hit the Franks and the Nomars, if you go more than a day, your saved searches are like
you're behind
500, and I'm like, I don't have time. Don't have time.
That definitely was what happened to me when I got back from the National. It was so much cards. It was very overwhelming. So I cleared my watch list of 100-something A-Rods and other cards and just made safe searches for certain cards. And I'll pop in and look at what A-Rod has listed, but very, very often, very few times I'll miss something. I just did the other day, but most of the time I don't. Now I have a very few specific cards. So.
Well, we kind of touched on, I know it's getting a little off topic, but we kind of touched on the effect that the National does or it has on people.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of like wipes you out, like emotionally, psychologically, physically. Because Alan's the same way. Like he's kind of been off the board. You're kind of like, man, I need to like go outside and look at the sunlight or something,
Yeah, for sure. I have to ask Eric. I mean, you got some cards out and stuff, right? I mean, I don't want to take over the hosting stuff here, but so I'll let Greg do that. But I personally would love to see some Rusties that you have, or if you got any cards out. I feel like that's important because I know you got a few cards out there that you're looking at.
Okay.
So any that have some storage or something, I would love to see it.
So I already showed it once, but I'll show it again. Just the way that I felt when the guy showed me a scan of these cards that I didn't even know existed. Whoa, 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 whoa. There we go. And I was like, it's mind blowing. That first time that you realize the most recognized insert set of the 90s, and there's versions of your guy you didn't even know about. It was kind of mind blowing. Another one of the things that I love is when somebody takes a classic release from the 90s and makes it super sweet or takes it up a notch. And you guys, I think you saw a couple of weeks ago, I posted this. It's a 2017 Optic White Sparkle. They take the 1990 red confetti design, which some people despise, and they made it pop. It's got the sparkles. It's got the coating, the good stock. You might remember 1997 Donruss Dominators. It's really a boring, well, you'll know it here in a second, a boring set, but Panini did an updated version of it, and man, that thing pops now. Yeah. Where they got the bling going on. And I thought, well, that's a card that I totally ignored before, that now they made it pop. And of course, I think for a lot of people, 89 Upper Deck was a big deal, but it was kind of funny. In that year, I couldn't afford 89 Upper Deck. That was $1 a pack. My allowance was like $10 a month. And but the very next year, I had a job, and 90 Leaf came out, and it was huge. You can just picture the Frank Thomas in your head when you close your eyes. And I also loved the Griffey. Well, so just in 98, later in that same decade of super sweet 90s, Collections comes out with their prized collections, and they did like a curtain calls. And man, that makes those things pop. The classic design, but with the refractor finish. They're pretty attainable because the print run's allegedly 440. But of course, because of that refractor finish, it makes the price pop too. But that's some of the stuff that I like, is like a take on something that I already remember that takes in another direction, or maybe even makes it better.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've not really. I know now. I don't think you have either dealt with too many of the newer cards.
I mean, there's a couple of A-Rods that come out from the Topps products that have him in Mariners uniforms. I think Topps is running out of all of his Yankees stuff, so they're starting to promote Mariners stuff, which I'm cool with because some of the cards are cool. But no, all the A-Rod's newest stuff in Panini, there's no team logo and there's no Mariners uniform, so I just typically don't go for it.
I mean, if Topps starts to do Mariners stuff, are you getting back into that?
I mean, he has some, but it just doesn't do anything for me nearly as much. If I run out of 90s stuff to buy, then maybe I'll start going for it.
There. It happens.
I hope that's gonna be a tough day, because my only other side PC guy is Joey Cora. I can't imagine collecting anyone else. Like I can't. There's nobody else on the Mariners that has that many cards out there. Like that would get me excited. So. Yeah, I don't know. There's always going to be a few mega A-Rods that I can spend months of saving to get if I really want to, but we'll see.
Well, that's another thing I think of, too, is then the way we feel about 90s cards now. Is there going to be a generation that 15 years from now looks back on cards today with the same fondness that we look and have like a similar market? I honestly don't know the answer to that. But if you imagine, when that first boom happened in the 70s, they were super nostalgic and excited over how many cards could there have been of their guys, like 3 to 5 a year. And now, everything's different. This is maybe more what Matt was talking about. This is really, I think, the only recognized one-of-one Rusty Greer that I've got. Again, the guy who has the collection who dwarfs mine, he was able to not only acquire one-of-ones when they were getting released, but then he acquired collections from other people, including one guy who took quantity for quality. And it killed me to hear that, because he got some one-on-ones from this guy, and he was sending him 800 count boxes of crap. So,
yeah.
Wow.
Everybody collects differently.
Right.
For some of those one-on-ones, like buying collections, you end up with them. It's one of those things that they just sit in boxes somewhere, and take a gamble and buy the box and get the 101.
Well, that's the odds of that happening now are so much slimmer. I mean, you can still find deals on eBay, but I mean, Eric, I really enjoyed listening to you talk about, collecting in like 2010, because the amount of cards you bought in a year, if you were to break down using math, which I know we all love kind of digging deeper, is, like how many of those were steals? How many of them were because people didn't list them right, or people didn't know what they had, or people didn't know what to look for on eBay. So like you get these collections now, it's so much harder to find that because the information is plenty now, so it definitely is a lot tricky for us collectors we're not going to pull one over anybody's eyes nowadays. You know what I mean? That 101's not going to fly under the radar at all if it ever gets listed.
Yeah.
So.
Even Check Out My Cards is different than when they first emerged, because when they first started, they're in the Seattle area as well. Yep. And people, I think, were just sending in like collections and listing them. And to some degree, you tap out on that, especially if the main source is your closest locations there in the Washington area. And it's deals I get now in CMC are few and far between, but it was pretty hot place in the early 2010s.
I bet.
Yeah,
wow.
Sure.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
So do you guys have any recent pickups that we can show off and talk about?
Got a couple.
Okay.
No, go ahead, guys. Go ahead.
Okay. Nothing? Oh, man, I want to see some more Rusty Greers.
I can do that.
Yeah. Why don't I guess I'll start.
Yep.
Topps Tech is a really popular product. I think a lot of people like going for the run of patterns. I'm not one of those people. I don't ever plan on doing it. But I have a gold from 2000, and I'd always wondered how nice the golds from 99 looked. But one got listed, and I was able to snag one, which is great. What I love about this card, kind of like the established mystique, is that the back is nicer than the front. Like it really shines nicely.
Yep.
And I love it because, Eric, we talk about photos of our player that we like, and I love A-Rod in that uniform. I love that Seattle did that in 98. They did the cutoffs with the shirts underneath. I just think and that was the year he went 40-40. So, that card has a lot of really cool nostalgic value for me as well. So, really happy to pick up a Tech Gold. Is Salmon in Topps Tech or Greer?
Salmon is. I don't know about Greer. I imagine.
No,
he's not. Salmon has his, but I don't have any. I think I have like 0 diffractors for Topps Tech. It's hard for me to get into Topps Tech because it's just so overwhelming. There's just so much stuff.
There is, and that's the only one I'm going to get. I'll get a diffractor from 98. That's from 99. I just get one of each and then call it good. I don't plan on going for the whole run, but it's a beautiful card. Really happy to get it.
Yeah, and if you guys ever do an episode on Topps Tech, that's my wheelhouse.
That is an episode that could go for like hours, man. But it would be fun to touch on it eventually. It's just it's like a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole, and just going down.
It's a fascinating story. I don't think it would last that long because it's not like it wouldn't last as long as the checklist for Tech.
Oh, geez, yeah, no joke.
All right, did you have anything?
So I wanted to show this one because one of my white whales is the 2000 version of this. This is the 99 Upper Deck MVP superscript numbered out of 25, Rusty Greer. But the 2000 version I don't have and I've not seen. So that's one of my white whales. And then here's what everybody loves.
Oh, the shine. Oh,
shiny.
Beautiful card, beautiful.
I'm not sure what I'm more excited about or upset about, the fact that you both have one and I don't, or that he took it completely out of the case and held it raw in your hand.
I'm raw, baby.
I'm like, he's pulling I'm not going to do a shout out or a name call here, but he's pulling a group member post. Might as well put it in the bike spokes, dude.
Well, that's going to make a show card.
Dude, no kidding. That's incredible, man. That card is amazing. That's the first one I've seen not in anything, so it is pretty cool to see it, like how it would have come out of a pack.
Yeah.
We've seen yours and Alan's in the graded cases, and then of course pictures of others. But man, that card is just. You imagine pulling that out of a pack and seeing the shine.
Man,
would have been stunned. Wow.
So I have a pretty boring mail day.
I bet a pretty boring one.
Yeah,
Nice.
it's
Awesome,
the bronze in the silver. I don't have the gold,
Mhm.
but I think some of you guys were talking about these just a couple weeks ago, and that's what made me pull the trigger. But I realized I didn't have any. I still don't have the gold, but that's pretty much been it for me. I have not done too much with the mail.
Well, I don't know if you know Matt Thomas Baker in the group, but he unearthed the silver for me, and then he unearthed the gold. So that's coming all the way from Alabama or something like that. So it was really tough because I feel like those cards get listed wrong all the time. Like everybody lists all the base as the silver press proof. It's like, no, man, it doesn't shine at all. You gotta look at the actual shine of the card. And so I'm really happy to have that run completed because A-Rod is in his glasses and he's in the teal uniform, which is the jersey that I have. And so, yeah, it's a great combo for sure. Did you run off and grab more cards, Eric?
Yeah, well, I got to say I'm a little insulted that I got on the episode that didn't have the Muhammad Ali. So I wanted to troll.
He's got it right there, of course. You should have dropped the Muhammad Ali. We needed to drop a Muhammad Ali quote, Eric. We totally dropped the ball there. That card, you know what? Next time you show it, it needs to be in like some kind of screw down or like magnetic. The fact that it's not in a magnetic is like the thick one.
Yeah, every time I show it, the case is going to get bigger and bigger.
So yeah, this card is not rare at all, but I know any real collector would have this card of their player, and that's the Prime Choice Reserve.
Not rare at all. Are you joking, man? Those things are ridiculously rare.
But it would be like a complete embarrassment if you tried to player collect somebody and you couldn't get that card. I don't even know how I'd feel about myself at that point.
Well, can I ask a question about that card? I was curious if you're going to show it. How many have you ever seen of Rusty Greer ever listed since you got back in 2010? How many?
None.
So, I mean, Greg and you share that, that annoyed feeling. There's an A-Rod on there right now from a seller, and one just ended that Alan bought. So those are the two that I've seen in the last 4 years, and then I bought mine from Brent. So A-Rod's going to get up there way before Rusty and Tim get up there. So that card has to be up there with like a Red Crusade for me. Those aren't going to get listed,
And I don't know if you know the backstory on some of Burbank's stock. But there was this like huge collector in Hawaii who passed away, and like the wife shipped it all to California to sell to them. I mean, he would do like cases after cases. And that's why you'll sometimes see almost like a checklist of some parallels is because he busted so much. He was almost getting sets of rare parallels. And I'm sure that whenever they first acquired that the salmon would, because that's one of the issues, that the salmon would have been there at that point.
I've been one on PWCC. It was like 2008.
Yeah.
It'll happen. It'll happen one day. I mean, the more we talk about these cards and whatnot, some guy's going to watch a podcast or some collector's going to watch a podcast. Oh my gosh, I have a bunch of those sitting in the closet. I need to throw them up on eBay or whatever.
I put a bounty out on it, like $25 bounty.
Well, my bounty's in good, but you never know.
That's one of the mysteries of the hobby is what happens to low end when it doesn't sell at retail stores.
Gets burned.
Does it? Yeah, it might.
ET cartridges out in the desert.
That's right.
I got one more here, Greg, that it's kind of a fun story. And again, it's in a Pro Mold case. So, Eric, I got him convinced to switch over to Pro Mold. But it's from, I got to get the year right. I believe it's 98 SP Authentic. It's the Home Run Chronicles die cut out of 70.
Follow Tanner, huh?
Yeah. Well, it's actually kind of funny because this card was listed on or posted on Instagram by Brent. He's got an Instagram account. He's posting all the scans on there. And I thought, I don't know, the card really doesn't do much for me. And then you kind of hold it in the light and you get the shine off of the foil. And I read closely, and it talks about him going 40-40. So I'm like, I have to pick up that card. So after I lost out on a couple other auctions, I pulled the trigger on this one. Those are really, really cool cards. And sorry, your guys aren't in there, but I had to show that. They're amazing.
It is what it is. I've made my peace with Salmon not being in a lot of sets.
Yeah, but that's a really cool card. I actually missed on one of those years ago. I kept passing on it, so I'm glad I was able to find another one.
Well, Eric, I appreciate you coming on the podcast. It was good to have you. We're gonna have to wrap it up. Got a few things I need to do, and but it was good to talk to Crusades. I'm glad we kind of got more in depth with it, and you got to talk about the Crusade event that happened, because that was kind of a monumental thing for Crusade collectors and player collectors. It's just I think you could definitely say that was a 90s card event.
Yep.
Happened. So that's kind of a unique experience that you got to have with some other collectors.
And again, with those pro molds, I've got them, so I expect to hopefully in the near future do my video of top whatever cards. And
want to see that, dude.
Yeah, for sure.
You may not even see a Rusty, but it'll be a mishmash of the of players that people recognize.
Well, I will just like to echo what Greg said. Is it was really cool having you on here because of your stories from that time of collecting when I was kind of thinking about getting into collecting, and I instead chose to get into, you know, some other basketball and stuff like this, and it was the wrong decision, clearly. But to just hear how it's progressed and all that is really cool. I love hearing those stories, and yeah, it was awesome having you on.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, we will see you guys on episode 15.
All righty.
All right. See ya.
See ya.